the Lillelid murders. This is a case that happened in Tennessee, and I was looking this up the other night, and this was really, really a disgusting. Well, some of it was. I mean, it's brutal. Let's put it that way. I'm gonna try to kind of not make it so brutal when I talk about it. So we're gonna diamond paint, and I'm gonna tell you about this now. I might butcher their name. I might have butchered the name, so I apologize if I did. Um, so just bear with me while I pronounce it however many different ways it is. I did go try to, yeah. So anyway, the background is that the three members of the Lillelid family were murdered on April the 6th, 1997. Vidar Lillelid, Delphina Lillelid, and their daughter Tabitha and their son Peter were shot on a deserted rural road in Bailington, Tennessee during a carjacking, oh my, a carjacking that was committed by a group of uh, youths, teenagers, whatever, and they were found dead at the scene while Tabitha died after being transported to the hospital. Peter survived, but he was left with disabilities. There were six people that from Kentucky that involved two minors. They were convicted of felony murder, and they all received life sentences and an additional sentence of 25 years each for the attempted good gosh, for the attempted murder of the youngest child, Peter. So I'm going to give you a background on the Lillelid family, and then we'll get into what happened to them. They grew. Vidar Lillelid grew up in Bergen, Norway, and in 1995 he moved. 1985, excuse me, he moved to the United States, and in 1989 he married Delphina Zalala Zalea, I guess. I'm butchering it. Sorry. And a first generation Honduran American, and she was from New York. He had met her through their common involvement in the Jehovah's Witness religion. So they were, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses. They by 1997 they had two children, 6-year-old Tabitha and 2-year-old Peter. So now on April the 6th, 1997, six young people from ages of 14 to 20 from Pikeville, Kentucky, which were Jason Bryant, Natasha Cornett, Dean Mullins, Joseph Reisner, Crystal Sturgill, and Karen Howe, were traveling to New Orleans, Louisiana, and shortly after leaving Pikeville, they realized that Reisner's car would not likely last the distance to New Orleans. And they had, discussed the possibility of leaving the car, or possibility of stealing a car from a parking lot or from a dealership. Now they were armed with a 9mm and a 25 caliber pistol. They were observed at a rest stop, picnic spot along Interstate 81, which is outside of Bailington in Kentucky or in Tennessee. There was a conversation with the Lillelid family who were returning from a convention, a religious convention, and Vidar was carrying his son Peter. He had approached Cornett and Howe to discuss his religious views before Reisner and Bryant joined the conversation. Now, my thought is, okay, I have nothing against Jehovah's Witness, but my thing is, why would you, you know, go, especially in a rest stop, in a picnic area, and go up to complete total strangers, especially children, and discuss? I mean, I get it, but that's my thing. Why would somebody just go up to somebody that's a complete total stranger? I mean, granted, it's different when they come knocking on your door, but still, I don't understand that concept of why they would have gone up to them. At why, especially Vidar would have gone up to them at, to discuss his religious views, and knowing, okay, and then, oh yeah, we're going to pull a gun on you and we're going to take your car. To me, that just, I don't understand. Sorry, I'm having to put wax in my three placer because I didn't have wax in my three placer. So I don't understand. I mean, I don't know enough about, Jehovah's Witness religion, except, what their beliefs are, but I don't understand why, someone, it just makes no sense to me. Why that, this, I mean, yeah, unless, of course, he felt, okay, maybe he saw something, Vidar saw something that would possibly, again, I'm baffled. Okay, now at some point, Reisner had displayed one of the guns and said, I hate to do you this way, but we are going to have to take you with us for your van. And that is a quote. And then he directed the family into their van, and then he, of course, Vidar pleaded with the group, offering his keys and his wallet in exchange for permission to remain at the rest stop, but Reisner refused. Now, mind you, all of this is because these kids wanted to go to New Orleans. Now, why they were going to New Orleans, I don't know. It does not tell you. Um, Now, Vidar drove the van while Reisner, holding the gun, sat in the passenger seat. Reisner, Bryant, Howe, and Cornett were in the van with the Lillelids, while Mullins and Sturgill followed in Reisner's car. So, my thing is, okay, if the car, now remember, they said that the car was not going to make it. So, my thing is, if the car isn't, is messed up, why follow them? The only thing I can think of, and that's probably what, it happens, is they go somewhere and, whatever. But, I, okay. Delphina began to sing. Bryant ordered her to stop. Reisner directed the Lillelids first to the interstate and then to a secluded. There we go. I'm having issues today, guys. I'm not. It doesn't want. Nobody wants me to talk. Road at the next exit, and they were then lined up against a ditch along the road where they were shot. Now, I've never been involved in a carjacking. Okay, again, I do know that sometimes carjackings can, end fatally, but this sounds to me like not only did they plan to do the carjacking, they planned to, basically do this execution style, is what it sounds like, especially if they have them lined up in a ditch. I mean, really? I, okay. I mean, teenagers, I mean, now I'm not saying all teenagers, but, I do, again, I'm speechless as I'm reading. And I was speechless when I was, going over this last night. It just totally blew me away that, this is what these kids did just to get a car. I just totally don't understand. Um, so now and of course they check the bodies, and Bryant states, and I'm gonna quote, so excuse the language, they're still fucking alive. And then they shot them again. Really? So, so now the group leaves. They leave the family there for dead, and they continue towards New Orleans in the Lillelid's van, and abandoning Reisner's car at the crime scene with its registration plates removed. Okay. Now, this is what I don't get. Okay. They stop at a Waffle House while going through Georgia. And, but they left the restaurant when a group of police officers arrived. They decided then to abandon their plans to go to New Orleans. Now, why? I don't know, not unless they thought, okay, these police officers that showed up were looking for them. I mean, that's the only, thing I could come up with. Um, and then they decided to go to Mexico instead. So when they reached the border, they were denied admittance because they did not have the proper identification to get into Mexico. But eventually they found a way into the country. Now, when they now of course now they're in Mexico, okay. Now Bryant was shot in the hand and the leg, and the group was stopped by the Mexican police. Now, how he was shot in the hand and the leg, I don't know. Not unless it was when they, illegally got into the country. That's all I can think of. So, when they claimed they were lost, the officers ordered the group out of the van and conducted a search. They found a knife and a photo album that belonged to the Lillelid family. And then they ordered the group to re-enter the United States, and where American Border Patrol searched them, and then they took them to an Arizona jail. So my question is, they had to have traveled. My thing is, they had to have traveled a long distance to get to where they were in Mexico to be transferred, over the border to get put into an Arizona jail. Because obviously, you know, last we know, they were in Georgia, where they went to go. Yeah. Now, at the time of their arrest, 2 days after the murder, several of them had personal items that belonged to the Lillelids in their possession. Oh, okay. My thing is, why would you keep that stuff? Why not get rid of it? I mean, that kind of, crazy, stupid, um, just crazy. So now the investigation begins, and the forensic pathologist testified that Vidar received a total of 6 gunshot wounds, one to the right side of his head, 5 to his chest. The first shot entered his right eye and traveled through his temple and exited in front of his right ear. While he could not be certain, it was the doctor's opinion that this shot was fired from a 9mm handgun and would have caused a loss of consciousness. And of course, then the victim fell to the ground and then was shot 3 times in the upper right side of his chest. The wounds were consistent with those of a 9 millimeter, and that the 3 gunshot wounds to the chest were deliberately fired to form the shape of an equilateral triangle. Okay. Now, when he was shot the 3 times, he was laying on his back. So my question is, why would he shoot them? Why would he make a triangle? I don't understand that. Um, the gunshot wound just below Mr. Lillelid's nipple was consistent with a 25 caliber weapon, and a final 9 millimeter gunshot wound was located just beneath it. There was a grazed laceration on the victim's forearm, on his right arm, where a bullet skimmed across the surface. Delphina was shot 8 times. Now, to me, that's a little excessive. I don't understand why they would shoot. Why they would shoot somebody that many times. I mean, yeah, they did shoot Vidar that 6 times or 7 times, but why would you shoot somebody that many times? You shoot him 6 times, and then you shoot her 8 times. That's a little excessive to me. Um, Now, the first shot scattered a bone in her left arm. The second shot scattered the femur in her left thigh. Now, the coroner, or the forensic, whatever he is, forensic doctor, testified that these shots wouldn't have killed her, but would have caused her severe pain and leaving her unable to stand. Delphina was shot an additional 6 times while on her back, and the first 3 shots struck her abdomen, and then it was his opinion that these shots were formed to form a triangular pattern that were similar to the injuries that Vidar had sustained. So there has to be a reason that these shots were like that, and why the triangle was formed. It doesn't make any sense. The 3 shots pierced her stomach. They traveled through her pancreas, her spleen, her left kidney, and her left adrenal gland. The final wound was located at the midsection of her abdomen, just above her navel, and was recovered from her spine. There was a 25 caliber gunshot that was recovered that was under her left armpit. And it came to a stop at the back of her left shoulder. Another bullet was recovered from the center of her liver, and her wounds were not immediately fatal. She could have remained conscious for as long as 25 minutes, including while her body was being driven in the van. So, I mean, these kids really, really were just downright brutal, and they just didn't seem to care. It sounds like. I mean, really? Now this is what, is kind of sad, and I'm giving you guys a kind of, disclaimer on this. This is about a child. There's 2 children that were, shot and hurt. So, uh, now 6-year-old Tabitha was shot once in the head, and the bullet entered her left side of her skull, and it exited out behind her right ear. The wound did cause immediate brain damage. So I'm assuming that I don't know if death was instant, um, but it did cause immediate brain death. Her organs were, continued to function through the use of life support until her uncle, who had been named her custodian, gave permission for the donation of her organs. Um, she was pronounced dead one day after the shooting. Now, Peter, he was 2 years old, and he was still, as you remember at the beginning, I said that he survived, basically. He was shot twice with a small caliber weapon. One shot entered behind his right ear and um, exited near his right eye. A second gunshot penetrated his back and exited through his chest. He was transported to the pediatric intensive care unit at the University of Tennessee Memorial Hospital, and where he was listed in critical condition. Peter required vigorous resuscitation. He having sustained a contusion to his right lung with some residual bleeding in his right chest. 11 days after the shooting, the doctors removed his damaged eye. He remained in the hospital for 17 days, and then before being transferred to a rehabilitation center in Knoxville. Now, the perpetrators, these I've only told you who they were at the beginning, and then I used their last names throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to tell you who each one of them is. There were 6 of them, and they were all from Kentucky, and they had troubled backgrounds. No, I'm not making excuses for these children. Um, but they struggled academically, substance abuse, with the exception of Bryant. And she had attended the Betsy Lane High School, or he had attended. So now the first perpetrator is Natasha Cornett. She was age 18, and she was born in Betsy Lane, Kentucky. She was the product of an affair, and which, again, like I said, that doesn't excuse her, what she did. And she grew up in poverty. She was a polite student until 6th grade, when her academic performance declined. She left school before completing the 9th grade, and had no history of an employment except babysitting. She started using alcohol and illegal drugs, including heroin, ecstasy, and cocaine. At the age of 14, she was arrested for forgery, um, due to a box of theft checks, and sentenced to juvenile court to 1 year of probation. So she started off pretty quickly with her, criminal activity. Um, Now, she then was arrested a second time for assaulting her mother and threatened to kill her with a knife, but her mother dismissed the charges. On her 17th birthday, she married Steve Cornett, but the marriage only ended after 10 months. Okay. I'm speechless. Sorry. And then the next one is Dean Mullins. Now, he was 19, and he was born in Harold, Kentucky in 1978. And he left school in 1996, um, during his 12th grade year, but was working on his GED. He had no criminal record, and he had been employed by a grocery store in Pikeville, Kentucky in 93 and 94. His family and friends stated that his behavior worsened after becoming involved with Natasha Cornett, whom he had planned to marry. So, yeah, this is just, again, I'm this case just kind of leaves me speechless and left me speechless because I'm like, huh? Um, Now, the next one is Joseph Reisner, and he was 20 years old, and he was born in Hazard County in 1976. He never met his biological father, and he adopted his stepfather's last name. And he lived in Columbia, Kentucky, but he moved to Georgia where he started fourth grade. He was described as a good student and with good work ethic until the separation of his mother and stepfather, which affected him emotionally. Now, I'm not saying, everybody has a way of dealing with certain, things in their life, but this his parents, his stepfather and his mother, separating kind of okay, I get that, kids have a certain way of dealing with things, but this is, you know, okay, this doesn't mean you go on and do a life of crime because your parents separate. I mean, um, he and his mother then moved back to Kentucky, and where he started using marijuana, alcohol, and LSD, and he claimed that he had sexual relationships with two of his babysitters when he was 12 years old. So I guess that could add to all the other, you know, problems that he's had in his life. And which, again, like I said, I'm not excusing anything they did, but these kids seem to just not have a pretty good life, or some of them did this was of their own making. I mean, I get some kids, your family, it's a broken, kids, there are kids that come from a broken home. I get that. My kids come from a broken home. But again, I don't see my 19-year-old or my, 23-year-old or my 30-year-old committing violent crimes. I mean, I just don't. Okay, maybe they have maybe there's other issues. I don't know. Now, Reisner joined. Okay, wait a minute. I'm skipping here. He declined academically, failing seventh grade and eighth grade before his grades uh, improved in 10th grade, which he completed at Betsy Lane High, where he met the other perpetrators, including his girlfriend, Karen Howell. So, as you guys can see, it all kind of revolves around that school. That's where they all met, in that one school. Right. He then joined the Army in 1995 and received an administrative discharge after testing positive for marijuana. He earned a GED in May of 96 and was accepted to the at Mayo Regional Technical Center in September. Now, he was the eldest of all the people in the group. Now, Crystal Sturgill, she was 18, and she was born in Harold, Kentucky. Her mother was refused to divulge the name of her father, and his name doesn't appear anywhere on her birth certificate. She was in her senior year, and she also attended, or excuse me, she was in her senior year at Betsy Lane High School. She attended Floyd County Technical School, where records indicate that she had been a slightly above average student. Her academic performance declined in high school, and then um, which she blamed on drugs and alcohol, but yet she performed all the, the required tests, drug testing, I'm assuming, and then she, performed well on standardized tests, and she applied for admission to several colleges. See, I'm trying to understand. Okay, a couple. This is what I don't understand. A couple of these kids, you know, seem to be good students, and they do well, and then they go on and like start careers, and then the drugs and all this. I get it, but I'm she worked. All right, now then she ended up working at Betsy Lane Elementary School daycare. And um, where her supervisors believed that she was a capable child caregiver and she received high marks. She had no prior criminal history, or either as a juvenile or an adult, but had been suspended from school several times. So there was a couple that didn't have, there are a couple of these kids that didn't have a criminal record, but yet, they do drugs and so forth, but neither one of them, there were observers that commented on the amount of emotional neglect that she suffered in her home. So I'm assuming that even though she was trying to do, trying to get herself, give herself a good life or whatever, she was being, emotionally neglected. Um, she accused in 1996. She accused her stepfather, of repeated sexual abuse. Now, after those accusations, she moved in with her aunt and began attending the Prestonburg High School in 1997, but soon had to move out. It doesn't say why she moved out of, her aunt's house. She was just, she just says she had to move out. Um, she lived in 13 places from the time that she made the allegations in December until the shootings occurred in April. So, now Sturgill was good friends with Edmund Mullins and was critical of his relationship with Natasha. Now, she had no history or violent criminal record before April of 97. So, yeah, I promise we're almost done. There's two more to talk about. Now, Jason Blake Bryant, he was 14, and he had an IQ of 85. So I'm assuming that he was the youngest of the group, but he was also disabled, mentally disabled, from the way it sounds. Um, he had the emotional and social skills of an 11-year-old. He had a history of alcohol and drug abuse, and was in 8th grade at Millard High School in Pike County, Kentucky. He had met Natasha at random in Pikeville, Kentucky, a month before the murders. Um, he was a legal minor at the time. Karen Howell, who was 17, was born in Delaware, Ohio in 1979. She moved to Kentucky when she was 3. Her early childhood was characterized as being severely violent fights between her parents until they divorced when she was 9 years old. Um, she was recorded as having a borderline retarded IQ of 78. Howe claimed that she had been sexually abused between the ages of 5 and 10 by her parental uncle and a cousin. And by the age of 13, she began to practice self mutilation. So this girl, had more problems than any of the other kids in the group, which I think is kind of, I'm not excusing these kids, but it's just kind of sad that these, um, Hal lived with her mother until she was 14. And then she started taking an interest in witchcraft. So I'm assuming that's where the unilateral triangle came in. I don't know when the one that when it was found on the victims. She had a history. All right, the she pursued. She began to use a Ouija board in automatic writing, and her mother found this, therefore bringing it to ministers who attempted to cast out demons from her daughter. She claimed that she had created love spells to get 2 boys to date her and that she hears voices. Okay. She moved in with her father after her first semester of high school. Um, and I guess that didn't last very long. But she rarely communicated with her father, and so then she dropped out of school. She moved back in with her father, and she continued to earn her GED. Now, then, of course, now she did abuse various drugs, particularly LSD. She claimed to have a bad trip, and she tried to chew her friend's arm off, but otherwise had no history of violence or a criminal record. She reported that she had attempted to commit suicide 4 times in the past and twice by overdosing on drugs. She had met Natasha and Joseph at school. She was a minor at the time of the crime and was saving up to buy a car by babysitting full time. Now, the interesting thing, this is kind of a side note, but when she was arrested and she was assigned um, a lawyer, a public defender, her public defender had never worked a murder case before, which I thought that was kind of okay, interesting, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so now this whole thing is kind of weird. So I apologize that it's weird and it's kind of strange. During the sentencing of Natasha, she coached her lawyer to call her the daughter of Satan. And her lawyer, the district attorney, considered this an angle of distraction. And um, references were eventually made by witnesses that stated that all 6 of them were involved in occultism and Satanism, and but there was no evidence presented. So then there were interviews that Bryant was the only one he could prove was a shooter, but he felt it wouldn't be just unless he convicted all six of the murders. So there's a possibility, and it sounds like he was the only one that committed those murders, and he was the only one that was the shooter. But you know, I'm not sure, just because I mean there was two different guns used. So my thing is, can they not prove that one of the others committed it? Can they not prove that one of the others did this and helped? I don't know. Um, Now, of course, they went through this lengthy trial, and Karen House stated that she wanted to fight it in court, even though she was not subject to the death penalty, but they were threatening to kill everyone if she didn't sign it. So she just caved. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, these kids, and she's just as much guilty as all of them, of doing this, of killing this family, and yet, oh, I'm only only one, I only did this because they were threatening to, you know give us the death penalty if we didn't sign this paper. Okay. Now, they all six signed, and they were all convicted of murder and as participants in the felony carjacking, the kidnapping, and which resulted in the three murders, and of course the three life sentences, and an attempted murder of 25 years each. They were sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole, and then, but the judge applied the same aggravated circumstances for all. However, it was not determined which of them had the main blame for the killings. Court testimony by the other defendants was that the youngest, Jason Bryant, had fired the shots, but the judge opined that another undetermined member of the group might have also. Now, Jason admitted officer an officer in Arizona that he had shot Vidar Lillelid, but Officer Mackey's testimony was not allowed. Now, why? Is because Bryant had not been read his rights before he made the admission. And he later changed his story, saying that Mullins and Reisner did the shooting. So nobody, technically, they really couldn't prove who actually did it, and at least that's what it sounds like. But all six of them, ended up going to jail anyway for all of it, and I think that's kind of sad because I understand these kids had some troubled childhood and troubled life period, but I just don't understand how you could just like go and just kill a whole family just for their car, and then basically, execution style. I mean, it sounds to me like they were all shot in the back of the head. So why would you just do that just for the car? And then turn around and make a unilateral triangle or equilateral triangle on the bodies when you fire the gun into their body. I mean, it just doesn't sit well with me. I when it comes to cases like this where families have been shot, and they're and it's teenagers that do it. It just rubs me wrong because number one, I have children. Number two, I have a teenager. Granted, he's 19, but I I guess it's the upbringing. But still, it sounds to me like some of these kids, even though, regardless of their upbringing, it sounds to me like, okay, they could have had a good life, but they just chose to, you know, do the take the easy way out, I guess. Now the aftermath of all this, I'm sorry, I'm going all off on a tangent. I'm sorry. Soon after his Peter Lillelid's medical condition stabilized at the end of 97. A custody battle that had begun between his maternal grandmother and from Lydia Salala in Miami and his paternal aunt Randy Heyer in Sweden. Um, Citing that Randy's pledge to raise Peter in the faith and teachings of the Jehovah's Witness as a deciding factor, awarded her custody of Peter on July 1st, 1997. Peter has been since raised in Sweden. That is where he's living. Um, Now, at age of 2000 or at 2007, at the age of 12, he still had trouble walking. By 2017, Peter had finished his IT education and was looking for work. So, regardless, I mean, this child was only 2 years old when he was shot. Regardless of his injuries, he is basically considered a survivor. I have to say, I'm very, very proud that he has gone so far. Um, in August of 2001, Natasha Cornett and death row inmate Krista Pike allegedly attacked a fellow prisoner, Patricia Jones. Now, Krista Pike sounds familiar. This girl sounds familiar. I can't remember. Oh, okay. Yeah. I've talked about her in another uh, episode. She was just one of the people that committed this murder. Um, but anyway, they nearly strangled Jones to death with a shoelace, and they were placed in a Pike and Jones were placed in a holding cell and with Cornett during a fire alarm. Now, the Department of Corrections did believe that Cornett was involved, and investigators did not find sufficient evidence to um, to charge her with helping Pike. So basically, she got off on that, even though. Now, the district attorney that convicted them had several interviews with these youths and stated in several that the six youths had planned the killing spree and that it was inspired by the film Natural Born Killers. Now, I have never seen that movie. It's not, I've seen, trailers for that movie, and it's not a movie that I really truly want to see. Um, but again, it's probably a good movie, but it's not just something that I would want to see. I've have watched it, and it just, not watched it, but like I said, I've seen the trailer, and it was very disturbing to me. Um, Now, considering that the killing began and ended with the Lillelid family, this theory is highly unlikely. So, okay. He also insisted that the bodies were arranged in the shape of a cross. Now, which that I did not know. That was something I had no clue until the very end of me reading this. Um, But the statement was refuted by the sheriff who investigated the scene. And in his opinion, the teens were just trying to get the hell out of there and did not try to arrange the bodies in any kind of manner. So my thing is, okay, on one hand, it looks like they planned this because obviously they did, because as soon as you know Vidar sees them at the rest stop and goes and starts talking to them, obviously, you know, they had all this planned out that they were just going to get the next car. But as for the rest of it, I don't know if that was planned. If you know what I'm saying. And on one hand, I believe that it was because execution style. I mean, hello. And then the equilateral triangle on the bodies, but very strange to me. Um, but we can take that into everybody has their own opinion. That's just me. But that's it for us today, guys. I know I didn't get a whole lot of diamond painting done on this painting while I was sitting here talking to you. And I do apologize. I have don't know what happened there. Also on that note, I have been thinking of uh, just recording me doing the diamond painting and then doing the voiceover of the true crime. And you guys can let me know if you like it the way that I'm doing it now, or would rather see me do the voiceover. Just let me know. Comment below and let me know. But again, guys, that's it for me, and I really do appreciate y'all watching. If you're new, thank you for watching, and please hit the like button. And if you're new, subscribe. And I hope everyone has a great week.